I'm thrilled to welcome you to the 2025 Museum of American Finance Gala, where we gather to celebrate this evening's three extraordinary honorees, Richard Gephardt, Peter Lynch, and the late Art Cashin. Tonight, we are delighted to present Richard Gephardt with the Whitehead Award for Distinguished Public Service and Financial Leadership. Dick has dedicated nearly 3 decades of his life to public service in the United States Congress, where he served as the House Majority and Minority Leader for over a decade. His instrumental role in passing landmark legislation on issues ranging from pension reform to health care is a powerful reminder that Washington can, in fact, get the job done. Since leaving Congress, Dick has become one of the nation's most sought-after advisors on many important issues. Tonight, we celebrate Dick for his remarkable contributions to both government and the financial services industry. We are also here to honor Peter Lynch with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Peter established an enduring legacy in American finance through his extraordinary leadership of Fidelity's Magellan Fund. From 1977 through 1990, Peter set the record for the best performing mutual fund in the world. The enormous success of Magellan helped create the savings nest egg for legions of everyday investors and helped to democratize our markets. More recently, Peter's made transformative contributions to initiatives across education, healthcare, and housing. Tonight, we celebrate Peter's incredible achievements and his lasting legacy. We have the privilege this evening to honor the late Art Cashin with a special recognition tribute. Art truly embodied the American dream, beginning his career at age 17 to support his family after his father's unexpected passing. By 23, Art was one of the youngest ever members of the New York Stock Exchange. He is remembered for his roles at the exchange with Payne Weber and UBS, and his morning outlook, Cashin's Comment, which was required reading on Wall Street. Art also made a tremendous impact through his philanthropic activities, helping countless underprivileged families here in New York City. We are grateful to have Art's family with us this evening as we honor his legacy. Thank you all for being here to celebrate the many contributions of these leaders and for supporting the important work of this museum.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight as we celebrate the Museum of American Finance and our 3 distinguished honorees, Richard Gephardt, Peter Lynch, and the late Art Cashin. Richard, your incredible career as a member of Congress and House Majority Leader exemplifies the significant contributions to public service and the public good in financial leadership the Whitehead Award honors. Congratulations, Richard, on this award. Peter, if anyone on the planet is deserving of the museum's Lifetime Achievement Award, it is Peter Lynch, arguably the most successful and innovative equity manager in Wall Street history. Peter, congratulations on receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award. Finally, the museum's special recognition tribute this year goes to the late Art Cashin. Art, of course, was a legendary market pundit, CNBC contributor, and trusted advisor during his more than 60 years in the industry. Thank you to Art's family and many friends for joining us tonight to celebrate this tribute. And thank you very much for joining us tonight, and enjoy the festivities.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to thank the Museum of American Finance for their commitment to recognizing the importance of our capital markets in the development of the greatest country and the strongest economy in the history of history. At Strategas, we believe firmly that economics and investing are social sciences that cannot be reduced to mathematics alone. Only through an understanding of humanity via history, in our opinion, do we have any chance of providing value to our clients. The museum helps everyone remember that. I would like to take a moment to recognize tonight's honorees, the Honorable Dick Gephardt and investment legend Peter Lynch, for their contributions to public service and the money management industry, respectively. I'm also so happy that the museum decided to recognize my old friend, Art Cashin, one of the lions of Wall Street on the New York Stock Exchange. Enjoy your evening.
Good evening. I would like to extend my gratitude to the Museum of American Finance. You've created an exceptional platform to unite industry leaders and innovators. This, as we all recognize the rich history of finance, deliberate on the current market trends, and collectively envision our future trajectory. Tonight, I'm pleased to recognize three remarkable individuals whose contributions to the financial industry have been truly transformative: Dick Gephardt, Peter Lynch, and Arthur Cashin Jr. Their commitment to excellence and the profound impact on our industry serves as a high benchmark for us all. On behalf of everyone at Protiviti, congratulations on your outstanding achievements.
Thank you to the Museum of American Finance for the opportunity once again to be part of this wonderful event. It's a privilege to celebrate the remarkable contributions of those who have significantly advanced the financial industry, bedrock of wealth creation and preservation. Finance plays such a crucial role in the functioning of our democracies and societies, and the museum's commitment to educating the public about the importance of the financial sector is invaluable. Tonight, I'm especially delighted to recognize our honorees, Richard Gephardt, Peter Lynch, and a special tribute to Arthur Cashin Jr. Your dedication and achievements have had a vital impact on our industry, and we're grateful for all that you have done to foster its advancement. Many congratulations on behalf of Oliver Wyman and Marsh McLennan.
Good evening, everyone. We are thrilled to be here to celebrate the Museum of American Finance, and my co-MC, Bob Pisani, is on his way up here. I'm Consuelo Mack, and this is a special evening for the two of us. That's right. We've been doing this for a long time because we love the Museum of American Finance. And tonight is going to be amazing because, number one, of our incredible honorees who are legends in their own right, in their own spheres, and also because there are so many of our good friends here who have been supporters of the museum since its early days, and certainly of this gala. And also, we want to welcome all of those of you who are new, who are joining us for the first time. This event will hook you, number one. You are in for a big treat, and you're also in for some financial education. Bob.
As many as you know, Consuelo and I are not just fans of the museum, we are trustees, and we're excited to be part of the program. The museum is about preserving and celebrating our financial history, but even more importantly to me, it's about financial literacy and financial education. Are you worried about people getting involved in get-rich-quick schemes? Are you worried that kids graduating from college today don't know what a stock is, don't know what a bond is, don't know what the Federal Reserve does, and yet they're expected to sign documents like buying mortgages and don't even understand that? Are you worried about that? I am, Consuelo is, and that's what the museum is about. Financial literacy. The country needs to have people understanding what the financial history of the United States is and the greatness and why America is so successful. And so much of the reason why America is so successful is because of the financial system and the legal system that endorses contracts. You might have learned this in high school. It's called civics, but it's more important than that. And somehow a lot of it has just fallen between the cracks with a lot of people. And that's what we're interested in. As we go through the program, we're going to be featuring our honorees. You've heard about them. Dick Gephardt will be accepting the Whitehead Award for Distinguished Public Service and Financial Leadership. The iconic Peter Lynch is here. He'll be honored with the museum's Lifetime Achievement Award. And this is of great personal importance to me, a man I spent 27 years with on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Art Cashin, who passed away in December, will be honored with a special recognition tribute. And I am here with his family tonight and just very happy that they are here with us, Consuelo.
Do I dare say a cheers for capitalism? I do, and that's part of this as well. Our hosts for this evening are Peter Cohen. He is the museum's superb chair, and David Cowan, the museum's dynamic president and CEO. Peter is a 2020 Lifetime Achievement honoree, and he joined the board that September 2020. And David has led the museum since 2009. David, I can't believe it's been that long. But under his leadership, the museum has created dozens of rotating exhibits, instituted the Museum Finance Academy for high school students and an additional series for adults, financial literacy, what Bob's talking about, and expanded the museum's public lecture series. David has written extensively as well on U.S. financial history and has co-authored several books on the subject, and the museum trustees are really grateful for their combined leadership. They would like to personally welcome you tonight. And so they're going to introduce tonight's program. Bob and I are going to be back soon throughout the evening, basically to talk about the honorees and their introductions. But first of all, let's welcome David Cowan, who is the President and CEO of the Museum of American Finance.
Good evening. Consuelo and Bob, how lucky are we to have two incredible financial media personalities on our board of trustees? The board is thank you, yeah. The board is now 42 members strong with wonderful leadership. Board Chair Peter Cohn brings wisdom and industry insight as well as a passion for understanding that finance and free enterprise were instrumental in the success of our nation. I also want to recognize the hardworking museum leadership of Vice Chair Karen Gephardt, Andrea DiCiolnucci, Vice Chair, and Sandy Crystal is our treasurer. Special thanks to Board Chair Emeritus, mentor, friend, colleague, Professor Richard Silla, and our founder, John Herzog, for his incredible generosity with his time, artifacts, and funding. Thank you, John. There are several pro bono thank yous. Trustee Marcy Cohen, Brett Delfino, the firm is ING America's all our pro bono legal advice, thank you, and all our pro bono PR and marketing services, including the short upcoming film you're going to see, are provided by the talented Dan Simon and his incredible firm of Vested. Now, there is one important recognition. We are an affiliate of the Smithsonian. We're one of 200 such museums designated as such. We don't get any money, we don't get any governance, but powerfully our affiliation avails us of certain relationships, the ability to borrow from the Smithsonian. For 20 years, our Smithsonian liaison, Jennifer Brundage, has taken care of this staff. She's moving on to bigger things at the Smithsonian. Thank you, Jennifer, from all of us here. Now, it takes a strong board to achieve all the accomplishments you're about to hear tonight. I would ask all the trustees now, please stand and be recognized for what you have done for us. Please stand, a round of applause. Special thanks to our Gala co-chairs for lending their name to tonight's event, and especially those who participated in our opening congratulations video that was kicked off, of course, by Citadel founder and CEO Ken Griffin. Now, we're sincerely appreciative of all the sponsors tonight, but I'd like to point out our presenting sponsor is the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology. Our platinum sponsors are Citadel and Citadel Securities, Elbridge Industries, and Jeffries, and our gold sponsors are Richard and Karen Gephardt, Carol Kamowitz, and the Lynch Foundation. Thank you to our many silver sponsors and our bronze sponsors, as well as all of you who have purchased a ticket for tonight. Thank you. Now, I'd like to acknowledge the lead-off donor to our Text to Donate campaign tonight, Anthony Scaramucci. He has once again kicked it off, generously donated $10,000. Every year he does this to encourage others to follow his lead. Now, you can donate at any time tonight. All you have to do is text to 44321. You put in the words MoAF Gala. You don't have to worry about capital letters. Now, our goal this evening is to match, if not surpass, last year's record-setting goal of $1.5 million, and anything you can do to get us there is just so appreciated. Remember that every dollar that you give goes not only to preserving the nation's financial history, but to helping thousands of young Americans learn to make smarter decisions. Now, maybe not to this audience, but certainly to the average American, finance can be intimidating, difficult to understand, and we break through this barrier with all of our extensive programming. It is always free of charge. In 2024, we held 50 events and classes, a total audience of more than 10,000 individuals. And now I'm excited to showcase just one of those programs, our Museum Finance Academy program for high school juniors and seniors. Linda Rapacki has run this free program since 2010. 2010. It's currently offered in a virtual format twice each year, 2 time zones. But rather than hear about it from me, we have brought back a student from the 2023 program. Her name is Lena Lynn. Lena, hopefully you're coming up now. Thank you. Please join me. She participated from Hunter High School. She was a first place scholarship winner. Today, Lena is a sophomore at Yale University, and she has come down to share some thoughts on the program. Please come up, Lena.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and great to see all of the new and familiar faces. I was at the Gala last year, so if you're here again, I would love to talk to you again. And for those I haven't met yet, I'm Lena, and I'm a sophomore at Yale. I'm studying global affairs. During high school, I was one of those clueless high schoolers, didn't really know what exactly I want to do with my career. I was thinking maybe public policy or even being a social media influencer. I mean, I feel like that's what a lot of people do nowadays. But everything changed when I joined the Museum of Finance Academy. My teacher, Larry, was really instrumental in nurturing my interest in finance, teaching me a lot of different topics, including the Rule of 72, or learning more about the history of fiat currency. And that experience didn't just teach me about finance, it definitely sparked my continued interest in pursuing it as a professional and personal career path. Now, 2 years later, after that initial introduction into finance, after a especially stressful recruiting process, I'm really happy to announce that I'll be going to Goldman Sachs for their 2026 Summer Analyst Program. So, yeah, I think, thank you all so much. I think that, I owe so much to Museum Finance Academy for really setting me on this path. And I couldn't be more grateful. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of this evening. And I really look forward to meeting more of you guys at the reception. Thank you.
In the past year, we awarded 10 such scholarships to deserving students. Another one's here tonight. His name is Jed Sloan from Stuyvesant's High School. Now, we're also excited to announce that we have a new MFA sponsor for the next 3 years. It is Fitch Ratings, a firm that believes and is committed to the power of financial literacy. Thank you, Fitch. Now, we believe in strong partnerships, and none stronger than our good friends at Fordham's Gabelli Center for Global Security Analysis. Our lecture series, again, always free. Since then, we have co-hosted 96 events together with legendary investors, authors, economists. By way of example, in 2024, we brought you CNN's Fareed Zakaria in conversation with political scientist Ian Bremmer, as well as a panel discussion on the career and legacy of Berkshire Hathaway's Vice Chair, Charlie Munger. So we cannot thank enough our Fordham Friends professors, Paul Johnson, Jim Kelly, Suresh Chatterjee, all here tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. Another valued and strong partnership is the New York Public Library with 3 different series for adults and teens. We reached thousands on the topics of retirement and investing. Our 2024 attendance was up 50% over 2023. Last year also featured some panel discussions on 2 of the most timely topics. AI and finance was sponsored and hosted by our friends at Betterment, and investing in sports was sponsored by our trustee Chris Perry and his firm of Broadridge Financial Solutions, and hosted by Fitch. And last spring, we debuted our new traveling exhibit in Tucson, courtesy of our trustee Rick Edelman, featuring some of the most unique, interesting, and historical artifacts. This 8-case exhibit is now available for bookings at industry conferences and corporate headquarters. And our incredible magazine, Financial History, edited, of course, by our Deputy Director, Kristen Aguilera. These are full-color issues, published 4 times a year. They're, of course, free. We receive great feedback from our readers. One of them is Warren Buffett, who has reached out many times to compliment Kristen, or one of the authors. And our digitization project continues with our good friends at Heritage Works, Keir Walton, Charlie Turano. Phase 1 of processing the collection is almost complete. Digitization has started. We look forward to securing the full funding on this project because once finished, The possibilities are endless to more broadly explain and interpret financial history with the actual objects that made it all possible. And to that end, Peter's going to showcase a couple of those objects.
Thanks, David. Thank you all for coming here tonight. We really appreciate it. It's been said before by Bob and Consuelo, but I want to repeat it, why this museum is so important. And it's because it represents the financial history of our nation and gives us context for the present and our future. And without our financial system, we wouldn't be the country we are today. For those not familiar with the museum's history, more than 30 years ago, John Herzog started the museum. Many of us old enough to remember knew of the firm co-led by John, Herzog, Heine, and Gedould. John has been a collector for over 6 generations, or 6 decades, and his collection forms the backbone of our incredible archive. He's also shared his intention to donate a significant portion of the rest of his collection to the museum. And while the museum's collection includes many unique items, I want to just share 3 of them with you right now. Last year we shared one, which was one of the bonds used for the Louisiana Purchase, one of the European bonds, which I think people have found fascinating. So tonight we're going to start off first with Alexander Hamilton's 1790 report on public credit. In this report, Hamilton outlined his plan for the U.S. federal government to assume all domestic and foreign Revolutionary War debts. Some 16,000 words in length, there are 6 words buried in the text which resonate. It was the price of liberty. Assuming the debt was going to have difficulty in passing, Hamilton did something unusual to ensure its passage by Congress. And he made a deal, incredible trade, with the Virginians Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and secured their votes by offering to move the nation's capital from New York to the shores of the Potomac, and that's how we got there. If you've seen the Broadway show Hamilton in the room where it happened, this is the document they were discussing. Second, after passing the Hamilton report, everyone turned in their debt and received new U.S. Treasury bonds. Yes, the same bonds that have a direct link to today's $36.5 trillion of debt. What you are looking at is none other than George Washington's Treasury bond from 1792 and one of our most prized items. And finally, and maybe less relevant to the financial history of this country, but nevertheless significant, a blank check signed by President John F. Kennedy. The context is that President Kennedy's Secret Service carried blank checks to the president, could make personal purchases during travel. And when you are president, what number do you get? Of course, you get number 1, shown in the upper right-hand corner. Sadly, this particular check was brought on his fateful trip to Dallas, where we know what happened. If you would like to see these items up close and personal, they will be on display at the registration desk when you leave. And now, having been the shortest speaker up here, and will be for the evening, I'm going to turn this back to David.
We've got some phenomenal things in our collection. Okay, we have an announcement. We are thrilled to announce tonight that we will be opening a physical museum in Boston. Yes, Boston. Since our flood in 2018, we reached out across the city and nationwide soliciting partnerships, and Boston stepped up. Our museum will be located in Commonwealth Pier among all the retail establishments at the front of what will be Fidelity's new corporate headquarters. Well, as you can tell from the claps, why Boston? Well, one reason is our relationship with the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology, led by our visionary trustee, George Nario, and the incomparable Eric Umar. Together, we will work with FCAT to enhance the museum visitor experience through engaging high-tech exhibits that will resonate with visitors of all ages. And as our nation's most distinguished financial historian, Professor Richard Silla explains, quote unquote, Boston arguably was the leading center of American financial innovation from the mid-1600s to the mid-1800s. Now we're targeting July 1, 2026 as an opening day concurrent with all the large celebrations of the 250th anniversary of our nation. And of course, entrance to all our exhibits and programs in Boston will be free of charge because we want no barriers to entry for anyone wanting to learn about finance. Now, thanks. Since everything's going to be free, it's going to take new sources of funding. So, of course, there'll be a donor wall at the entrance to the museum. We're offering naming rights to our exhibits. So if your firm or you are interested in supporting this exciting next step for the museum, please see me. However, of course, one easy way to assist us is just through the text to donate. And don't worry, New York. All the robust New York programs you heard about tonight will continue and grow. And we have the flexibility over time to open physical museums here, there, and everywhere because we are our nation's finance museum. And before I begin our highlight video, I have to recognize our incredibly hardworking and valued staff. A huge thank you to Kristen, Linda, Maura, Sarah, Robert, Stephen, Ben, and Jean, and especially Mindy, who has been working night and day for months to bring you this amazing evening. The average tenure of our team is 16 years at this museum, and that is testimony to their dedication to the museum.
To start our program tonight, this evening we're going to hear what makes our honorees such deserving recipients of the museum's awards and the recognition. Our first presentation is to a man the Washington Post called Wall Street's version of Walter Cronkite. This is a very personal tribute for me. I spent 27 years sitting by this man's side. He had an incalculable influence on me. Art Cashin was my friend, and most importantly, he was the rarest of all creatures. He had no natural enemies. You would think on Wall Street, people have enemies, they do. But Art Cashin was a man that was beloved by everyone. Bulls and bears and conservatives and liberals, nobody ever had a nasty word to say about Art Cashin. Art was UBS's director of floor operations at the New York Stock Exchange, but he was a lot more than that to all of us, and particularly to CNBC when he was a regular on our air for 25 years. As many of you know, Art Cashin passed away in December at the age of 83. Tomorrow is his birthday. He would have been 84 years old. Isn't that wonderful? What made Art Cashin such a wonderful, likable guy? His success was, I think, attributable to a combination of charm, wit, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to conform to the modern world. He did not have credit cards. He carried cash everywhere he went. He didn't use a computer. He had a beat-up worn flip phone. He didn't like cell phones. He didn't like a lot of things of modern convenience. But he was a man of tradition. Every year on New Year's Eve, he led the singing on the floor of Wait Till the Sun Shines, Nellie, a 1905 song. And we continued that tradition this year. Despite his absence, his family came in and we all sang at the Exchange. There were days when Art Cashin, I stood next to him for so many years, there were days he came in looking like he was a homeless person. He was rumpled, his suits were rumpled, he had ties that were from the 1950s. But it was a very carefully constructed persona, very carefully constructed. It looked like it was casual, but he knew exactly what he was doing. He joined Payne Weber in 1980 to manage its floor operations. He continued to do so after it was acquired by UBS in 2010. in 2000. Then September 11, 2001, he'd often recall his escape from Ground Zero when terrorists crashed in the World Trade Centers. He chaired the NYC's Fallen Hero Fund and raised millions of dollars for charity. He was a remarkable market historian. I spent hours and hours and hours sitting talking about the history of the market. And the most important thing is he never let data get in the way. He knew the data, but the most important thing to him was the ability to tell a story. For him, narrative always triumphed over facts and data. He was a market historian, but he was not an academic. And he made that very clear. And he had a huge influence on the way I look at and cover the markets for me. He had two great loves in his life: his family, who are here today, and the New York Stock Exchange. At the time Art joined Wall Street, the vast majority of trading took place on the floor. When I got there in 1996, 80%, there were 4,000 people that did 80% of the volume. That was his world. He lived in it. He ruled it. His early memories revolved around the noise of thousands of brokers shouting at each other. He claimed to be able to tell the market was moving up or down by the pitch of the screaming. Among his many friends, including a group known as the Friends of Fermentation, who are here tonight, I was a member as well, we assembled every day after trading halted. Perhaps he'll best remember for his modesty. Art Cashin was one of the great raconteurs, storytellers, and drinkers in the history of Wall Street. Going out with Art Cashin for a night was like participating in an episode of Mad Men. You'd go out and you'd sit down and he'd order his favorite drink, Dewar's on the rocks. I'd order bourbon, and an hour and a half later, you're still there with Art. Art was a slow drinker. Those are the dangerous ones. They're not one of these, oh, give me a double vodka, I got 20 minutes to catch the train. No, you're an hour and a half later, you're in your third drink with Art, and then he starts ordering dinner. First thing, Irish caviar. That's pigs in a blanket. That's what he called. Johnny, bring me some Irish caviar. Then the French fries, then a hamburger, then maybe a steak. And most of the time, I never made it to the steak. I never even made it to the French fries. He'd come into the middle of after the second drink. Now, Bob, I heard what you had to say on the air. It was very good, but you missed something. Really? Now I'm going to hear a lecture from Professor Cashin about how I screwed up today. Waiter, more bourbon, please, over here. Invariably, though, he was right, which was really annoying. Really annoying. He invariably helped improve my reporting, and I got better and better. He stood up for me when I came down there in 1996, 4,000 people on the floor. You want to know what loneliness is like? 4,000 people on the floor, all of them potential stories and sources, and nobody will talk to you. Art Cashin was one of the few who stood up and said, this guy Pisani is okay. I'll never forget that. You'd never forget somebody who helps you like that. I know tonight he'd be honored, but a little bit puzzled as to why we've singled him out for this special recognition award. Why don't you join me in watching this very brief video?
In the intensely competitive and often vicious world of stock market commentary, Art Cashin was that rarest of all creatures, a man respected by all, bulls and bears, liberals and conservatives alike. He was born in Jersey City, New Jersey in 1941 and began his business career when he was 17 years old and still in high school.
So what you need is comfortable shoes for your workday.
In 1964, at age 23, he became one of the youngest members of the New York Stock Exchange. Years later, he would proudly point to the book he signed the day he became a member, a book that contained the signatures of other notables like
J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Arthur D. Cashin Jr., December 30th, 1964.
Cashin was head of floor trading for Payne Weber, then UBS, and was a regular commentator on CNBC for more than 25 years. But he was best known as a market historian, a teller of stories, and a regular at the many watering holes around the New York Stock Exchange. Part of his charm was his refusal to adopt many of the conveniences of the modern world. He refused to learn how to use a computer. His notes were handwritten and then sent to his assistant. His desk was piled high with papers he had accumulated over many years. He refused to buy a smartphone. He refused to use credit cards and paid for everything with cash.
You pay by credit card. People know where you went to drink, how much you drank, and what you were drinking. So If you want to keep the anonymity in there, you pay cash.
But Cashin is perhaps best remembered for his skill as a storyteller about the markets.
I have been fortunate enough over the years to be able to look at very complicated situations or problems and be able to reduce them to understandable items by using a story or a parable or something.
His daily market commentary, Cashin's Comments, ran continuously for over 40 years and was widely read on Wall Street. It invariably began with a history lesson that was applied to the stock market.
Sue sends you a big kiss. Hold on. Mwah.
I wish you had delivered it personally, Sue.
Among his many friends, Cashin will perhaps be best remembered for his modesty.
Hey.
He seemed genuinely puzzled about his popularity.
People have an interest in Arthur Cashin. I can't fully understand why.
Typically, he demurred when the Washington Post ran a long profile of his career, calling him Wall Street's version of Walter Cronkite.
Well, I think I owe an apology to Walter Cronkite, but that's all right. 1, 2, 3.
Wait till the sun shines, Nellie, as the clouds go drifting by. We will be happy, Nellie. Dawn is bright. Down Lover's Lane we'll wander, sweetheart, you and I. Wait till the sun shines, Nellie.
So after 2.5 hours of drinking with Art Cashin, I'd go, Art, I gotta go home. And he'd say, well, then go home, Ben. But remember what I told you about today. So I'd come in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, there it would be, Cashin's comment in my inbox. He went home at 2 o'clock in the morning and wrote these stories, these amazing stories for decades and decades and decades. What a wonderful man. I want to bring up Art Cashin's son, Art and Peter Cashin, to join me on stage to accept this special recognition tribute to their father, Art Cashin.
Thanks, Bob, and thank you to the Museum of American Finance and its board for choosing to honor our father with this recognition. It's still impressive to us to hear his name grouped with the Honorable Dick Gephardt and esteemed Peter Lynch. We'd also like to thank the Fidelity Center for Applied Technology, George and Eric, for sharing their table with us at tonight's event. We all know the old saying, an honoree at a gala is like a deceased at the funeral. One is required to be there, but nobody expects to hear anything meaningful from them. I think that goes double for the honoree's offspring. So we won't pull an Adrian Brody going for the longest acceptance speech tonight. When the museum approached us about this tribute, it started a debate, as nearly everything does between my brother and I. Was Dad being put in the museum as a treasure or a relic? I won't say which side either of us are on. Relic.
Yeah, that's enough out of you. That's just about enough out of you, thank you. But as we read up on a museum's mission and its mandates to preserve history and educate the public, it spoke to us as a family. We wanted to say just a few words about how Dad tried to honor the history and educate people about the American financial system. Becoming a part of the NYSE's historic role in the story of American finance was never lost on our father. At the age of 23, a poor kid from Jersey City went to sign the same members roster as J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, and this was an accomplishment that he was so proud of. I got to sign it many years later. He went to work every day at what he called the Cathedral of Finance. In fact, some likened it to getting, I once set up a tour for a friend of mine with my dad, and he likened it to getting a tour of the Vatican from the Pope. He knew his history backwards and forwards. One of the tributes to this is that Mike Santoli mentioned when he was trying to do research on a Cuban Missile Crisis and how the stock market reacted to it. Mike realized that he should just go ask Arthur to give them a firsthand account of what actually happened. Regrettably, though, this perspective on history is lost with our dad's passing.
As for education, some of that started at home. While other kids were into comic books like Howard the Duck, our father brought us the ones from the New York Fed explaining how banking and money supply worked.
True story.
Those were kind of hard to trade. It was an early lesson about supply and demand. Many people in the industry were scared once the reporters got live access to the floor of the exchange. But Dad's thought was, if they're going to be telling the story, let's make sure they get it right. That began his efforts to educate the reporters on the most important of the 5 W's, the why of the story. As Bob can attest to, Dad thought the why was the most critical. His hope, by educating the reporters, he would have some part in educating the investors.
Dad's respect and possibly even love of history and education was born in his Jesuit experience. Critical and analytical thinking were a foundation to that. He certainly excelled in applying that to markets, and he made sure that he applied that to our lives. Having to turn down a college scholarship to support his family, those were the tools he brought with him when he entered the financial arena. We are proud to have Jack Raslowski, the current president of his alma mater, Xavier High School, here to honor that dimension of Dad. Our family is working with Xavier to establish multiple scholarships in his honor.
In closing, our family would like to thank the many, many friends who are here to honor Dad, from Bill Carroll and the people from UBS, the NYSE, and the floor community, and his best friend, James P. McGilvray, who would not turn down a chance to marinate some ice cubes in his honor. We hope you support the museum and its efforts to preserve our history and educate, and we hope that it will strengthen our economy and our society. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go away. Hold on. Don't go away.
You can't escape that quickly.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back.
Well, we had a little story for Consuelo, though. When Dad would stay home, he would have channel 68
oh my
on the
goodness,
television.
Right. The early days.
Right. So we'd have there. He and I would be waiting for the end so we could see Uncle Floyd.
That was where I started my television career. Your dad, I treasure, and this museum is about keeping the history of these treasures. So I hope that we can work with you to preserve your dad's wisdom, whatever we can impart. So this is an important part of that step.
We would be honored to do that.
So this is the Special Recognition Award in memory of Arthur D. Cashin, Jr., honoring a giant in the financial industry, a highly regarded market pundit, and a trusted advisor for over 60 years to clients, employees, and the investing public at large. So thank you, Art and Peter, so much for joining us with memories of your dad. So now it's time to present the Whitehead Award, which is the honor that this museum gives for the dual dedication of advancing both the financial world and the world of public service. And this award was introduced by a Wall Street giant and one of the early museum supporters, John Whitehead, in 2008, who was the legendary head of Goldman Sachs when it was a partnership. And it has paid tribute to many outstanding leaders who have demonstrated their commitment to culture of service in both the public and private sector. So tonight, I am so thrilled about this. We are going to honor someone who we all can agree, regardless of your political persuasion, is most worthy of this award. And that is former Democratic leader in the U.S. House of Representatives, Richard Gephardt. And as I told Richard Gephardt upstairs earlier, I still can't call you Dick or Richard. To me, you are Mr. Speaker and always will be. So Dick Gephardt, that you heard from Ken Griffin as well, served for 28 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. He represented his hometown, Missouri's 3rd Congressional District. His first year, he was appointed to both the House Ways and Means and Budget Committees, which I remember actually well. I remember when you served there. And he also served as the House Democratic Leader, House Majority Leader, and Minority Leader. He was a leading strategist for the Democratic Party's platforms and the chief architect for landmark reforms. He worked with President George W. Bush on balancing the federal budget. Oh, for those days. And he completed this effort under President Bill Clinton when the federal budget actually had a surplus. Talk about working effectively across the aisle. Today, he is a trusted advisor in corporations, nonprofits, and serves as a member of this museum's advisory council, for which we are extremely grateful. So in recognition for his many contributions to the public and private sectors, Dick Gephardt is our 2025 Whitehead Award honoree. Now, I am just a small part of this because the big introduction to Mr. Speaker is going to be Admiral Bill Owens. So after serving for 35 years in the Navy, I come from a family of Marines, so yes, sir. So glad to have you here. Bill retired as a 4-star admiral and from his position as vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the 2nd-ranking U.S. military officer in this country. He is currently the co-founder and executive chairman of Red Bison Technology Group and chairman of a cryptocurrency exchange in Europe. Bill serves on many boards and is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and the founder of a China-U.S. forum uniting 4-star military officers to improve China-U.S. cooperation. And Godspeed you with that assignment, and I hope you're making great progress. And obviously, he is a very close friend of our honoree, Dick Gephardt. So please join me in welcoming Admiral Bill Owens to introduce our 2025 recipient of the museum's John Whitehead Award.
Well, friends, what a pleasure to be here at the museum. I've been asking many of you tonight, why are you from New York? And I'm not, and it's great to see all of you here and what you do for this country. I have this 90-minute introduction, and I was told I had to cut it a little. So I just want to tell you about this special guy, Dick Gephardt. When I was senior in the military, I spent a lot of time in Congress, a lot of time to observe what was going on there, and a lot of time with people who really mattered, who served this country. And I think that's really my emphasis tonight, is when you look at those who served, truly, these people like Dick Gephardt, who were there for everyone across the aisle, as was said, all the time, always thinking of what was the best thing for this country, did these many, many important things. And I have to ask, where are these people today? It has been really my honor. I've served with Dick on several boards, always looking to him for knowledge, and of course the boards were always interested in who was going to win the next election. He was never wrong, and we all benefited from Dick Gephardt's involvement in those boards and in the lives that we all led, because he cared. And so I was a senior partner at AEA Investors, which was one of John Whitehead's places, and it just gives me a huge amount of pleasure to let you know that this is a unique individual. Side by side with many of these awardees in the past, Robert Rubin, Janet Yellen, etc. This is a public servant of this country. And God bless him. I think he shook hands with most American citizens when he was running for president and when he ran for Congress. He was always working to get to know the people. I never ever saw anybody in Congress or the Senate who ever disliked Dick Gephardt. Even though he took different positions, he was never taking shots at them. And he was a man who all of us in the military looked up to enormously, and who we knew was there for the U.S. Constitution and was there as a member of Congress for the people of this country. And so, you know, when it comes to public service, they don't come better than Dick Gephardt. And I'm deeply honored to be able to tell you about him a little bit tonight. Now, I want to conclude my comments by telling you about an old admiral friend of mine who was in his late 90s, and he said, "Bill, I want you to remember something in your life." This was 3 or 4 years ago. He said, "You know, one of the great blessings that has come across my awareness in the last couple of years has been for men to reflect on their lives and reflect on those very few people who made a big difference in their lives and be able to tell them about it and to say to them, 'I love you.'" And now my wife tells me, "Don't do that with women, Bill." But I want to tell you, friends, as I look back on my life, and I've been blessed to be in the military for a long time and a lot of time in business, I love Dick Gephardt. And he's one of those handful of people who stands truly on top of the stack. And we're so honored to be here tonight to honor him. And so I give you Dick Gephardt.
Thank you, Bill. And I love you. And you'll learn in a moment that it's Bill that should be getting this award tonight. What a wonderful human being. What a leader of our people in the military, and he's been a huge leader in the business community after his service in the military. It's a great honor for me to be here tonight, being honored with luminaries like Art Cashin and Peter Lynch. And I have to say something to Peter that I didn't get a chance to say to him earlier tonight. When I was in Congress, you don't make money. You're in it for service. When I got out of Congress, after I made a little bit of money, I think I had $5,000 in the bank, I decided I needed to figure out how to invest the money so we could make more money. And I talked to a lot of people, and they said, "You got to be in the Magellan Fund." And I said, "What's that?" And they said, "It's a Fidelity fund, and you ought to put your money in there. They have a fabulous record, and they've got this guy, Peter Lynch, who is awesome investor on your behalf once you put even $1 in the fund." So, Peter, I made money on the Magellan Fund. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am a big fan of this museum. And as you heard tonight, it has played a vital role in educating Americans, and especially young Americans, of the crucial role that finance plays in our fabulous economic history. Let's spend a moment as I start talking about that incredible American economy. In the past 80 years, America has had the best economy of any country in the world. And it's not just a great economy for a few people. It's a great economy for all the people. Listen to these numbers. In 1950, the per capita annual income of Americans was $9,000. In 2023, annual per capita income was $81,000. No wonder that millions of people from all over the world are risking their lives and their families' lives to get here, to be part of this incredible American economy. What are the elements that has allowed this to happen? I think there are four: democracy, freedom, rule of law, and capitalism. All four have to be present in order to have the economic performance that we have had. The crucial foundation of this capitalist system was set in place by, as you heard earlier tonight, people like Alexander Hamilton. And they achieved establishing the public credit. They created the first bank of the United States, the U.S. Mint, and a lot more. This foundation has had to be amended and improved by generations over our 250-year history. In the 1990s, I had a minor role with 10 years of very hard work on the part of 535 members of Congress, 2 different presidents, and countless citizens like Admiral Owens, who helped us achieve a balanced budget. And believe it or not, many of you may not remember this, we had a surplus for 4 years at the end of the 90s. A surplus. We even had discussions with Bob Rubin, who was Secretary of the Treasury at the time, about what in the heck are we going to do with the surplus? That's a high-class problem. That's what we together, working together, achieved. Since 1950, there are only 4 years that we had a balanced budget. 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. I was Democratic leader in the House in 1990 when we started on the path to a balanced budget. The president then was George H.W. Bush, who I loved. He was a Republican, I'm a Democrat. He called the leaders down to the White House 4 times because we had this big deficit that was left over from the Reagan administration, which he was part of. And he said to us, we got to have a budget summit. We've got to get rid of this deficit. We've got to work toward a balanced budget. And we, the Democrats, said to him, is everything going to be on the table? And he said, yes, everything's on the table except taxes. I can't put taxes on the table. He said, I gave a speech when I got nominated for the presidency in Houston, And I said, read my lips, no new taxes. I can't go back on that promise. We said we understand. We appreciate that. But we're not coming to a summit. We don't know what we're going to do, but we got to have all the options in front of us. He said, okay, not going to do it. The fifth time he called us down to the White House, we had dinner in the Oval Office. The four leaders, President Bush, Dan Quayle, Vice President. And he looked at us before we got the food, and he said, okay, I get the joke. We're putting everything on the table. He handed a press release to Marlin Fitzwater, who was standing behind him. And there we go. We said, great, we're going to do this. We went out and back, waiting for the cars to pick us up, take us back to the Capitol. And President Bush is standing next to me, and he's going foot to foot. He's nervous as a cat. I said, Mr. President, what's wrong? He said, the fat's in the fire. I cite this story ever since. That's leadership. Leadership is taking on your own side, not the other side. And so that started 9 months of negotiation. I led the effort for the Democrats. Bob Dole led it for the Republicans. And Dick Darman was the budget director, and he was the liaison to us from President Bush. 9 months. We had all the senators, House members in rooms for hours on end trying to negotiate the cuts that we were going to make in the budget. And by the time we got into the fall of the year, I could see we were never going to get this done. Because reporters were coming up to people saying, hey, we hear you're going to cut Social Security. We hear you're going to cut Medicare. Would you vote for that? Oh, no, I'd never vote for that. I said, we're not going to have any votes for anything. We got to get these people off the campus. So we went to Andrews Air Force Base for 10 days and nights and locked up 120 members of Congress to negotiate the deal, to get it finished. I had 10 hot fudge sundaes with Bob Dole. I think I gained 10 pounds. We finally got it done. We finally ran it on the floor. We finally passed it by one vote in both houses. After it had passed, I was the last person on the floor. I had to close the floor. It was right before the holidays. And when I walked off the floor to the speaker's lobby, which sits right off the floor, there was only one person there. That was Dick Darman. And we hugged and cried because we knew how hard this was, but what joy we had that we were able, working with everybody, to get it done. Then Bill Clinton defeated President Bush in the election in 1992. And then Bill Clinton invited the Democratic leaders down to Little Rock in the state capitol to have dinner, to talk about what should our plan be in the early part of the administration. And everybody said their piece. I think a lot of people wanted to do health care. When I got my chance to talk, I said, Mr. President, we just went through an excruciating exercise to get half toward a balanced budget. We have to finish the job. To his great credit, he said, that's what we're going to do. And that's what we did. When I went back to my caucus and told them what we were going to do, I knew from talking to Newt Gingrich that we weren't going to get any Republican votes for this because we just won the presidency, the House, and the Senate. So it was our job. I said, fine. So again, we worked for 9 months to put together the cuts and the it was the last time the gasoline tax was increased by 3 cents. That was the only tax in the package. And then once we got it negotiated, I had to go around and get the votes. And I'd go to members and say, we got to do this. I know it's hard politically. I know you're going to anger people in your district. And often they'd say to me, I should vote for this. This is the right thing to do, but I can't do it. And I'd say, why? And they'd say, I don't think I can get reelected. And I would say, why did you come here? If what you just told me would have been said by the young people, the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds that assaulted the beach at Normandy, we'd all be speaking German. They put country over self, and that's what you have to do. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But we passed it by one vote. And I'll never forget, as long as I live, when the vote was starting to end. It's on the electronic screen in the House floor. And I had asked the freshmen to hold back because I didn't know if we had the votes. Everybody wanted to vote no, but have it pass. And so most of the freshmen did hold out, but when the vote ended, it was tied, and only one freshman, a woman from Pennsylvania, had not voted. I went over to Marjorie Mezvinsky and I said, Marjorie, this is it. Forget about me. Forget about your colleagues. Forget about Bill Clinton. Forget about the Democratic Party. This is about the country. If we lose, we can never come back to where we are right now. She said, I'm going to lose my election. I said, I know, we'll do everything we can to help you. And she said, okay, I'll do it. She walked down. All 435 members were on the floor watching this. They knew what I was talking to her about. She walked down, and you have to vote by card after the electronics go off. She plopped down her green card. The Republicans stood and waved and sang, bye-bye Marjorie. She lost the election. She went to teach poli-sci at the University of Pennsylvania, and she'd always call me every year and say, I want to bring my class to D.C. Would you talk to them? I said, of course. Duh. And she would bring her class in, and I would introduce her to her class. And I would say, Marjorie, your professor is my hero of democracy. She put country over self. And that's the test of any public servant. So now, as you heard a little earlier, the national debt is over $36 trillion. Our interest cost is greater than the entire budget for national defense. Just think about that. There's not even a discussion today about balancing the budget. Nobody brings it up. And right now, there's an understandable desire on the part of the new administration to go around the constitutional framework and just cut the budget without Congress. Just push Congress aside and just do it with the executive branch. I understand the frustration, but I hope and pray that they will ultimately stick with the Constitution and the separation of powers. Why do I say that? I was in Congress for 28 years. I was leader for about half that time. I saw a lot of big, tough, controversial issues get decided. I mean, people were amped up on both sides of the issue. But we finally got the compromise, like I said with these budgets. And what I was in awe of was that even though when we got the thing done, about half the people in the country were very angry at that outcome. They didn't get enough, they gave too much, they were angry. But they didn't want to pick up a rifle. They didn't want to leave the country because they thought the process was fair. They were heard. They had a vote. They just didn't win this time. Maybe there'll be another time. So they were willing to grudgingly put up with that result. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the majesty, the magic, the power of democracy, self-government. Self-government. It's really called consent of the governed. In 1789, our founders had a radical idea. They believed that we could govern ourselves. They didn't want a king. They didn't want a pharaoh. They didn't want a potentate. They wanted all of us to govern ourselves. When they were finished writing the Constitution, when Ben Franklin came out of Constitution Hall, there was a crowd, and they had a question. They said, "Mr. Franklin, have we decided to have a republic or a monarchy?" And he said, "We've decided to have a republic." And then he turned to walk away, but then he stopped. And he came back. And he said, "We have decided to have a republic if we can keep it." We have been keeping it for 250 years. And I believe with all my heart that we're going to keep on keeping it for many, many, many years to come. Thank you for this honor. Thank you for letting me be here.
Wow, I am inspired, so let's keep it. So this is the Whitehead Award presentation. Distinguished Public Service and Financial Leadership to Richard A. Gephardt, honoring a highly respected former government leader and chief architect of landmark reforms in taxes, healthcare, pensions, education, energy, trade policy, and fiscal responsibility, who continues to influence corporate policies in the private sector, and certainly all of us here. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Our final award has only been presented 4 times before this evening to recognize the impactful careers of financial icons. Past recipients are Peter Cohen, now the chairman of the museum's Board of Trustees. You heard from him earlier, showing Washington's bonds. Thomas Petterfy, the chairman and founder of Interactive Brokers Group. Mark Schenkman, who's here tonight, founder and president of Schenkman Capital, and a valued museum trustee. Thank you, Mark. And last year's honoree, the legendary Howard Marks, co-founder and chairman of Oak Tree Capital Management, who would have been here. I saw him the other day. He came on the floor of the stock exchange. He's in India, rustling up money. I said, why India? He said, well, there's money in India. So thank you, Howard. Tonight, we're honoring a real icon in the financial world with our Lifetime Achievement Award. This is Peter Lynch, the vice chairman of Fidelity Management and Research Company. Mr. Lynch is widely considered one of the most successful money managers in Wall Street history. When he retired or left the post at Fidelity Magellan in 1990, I was just starting that year at CNBC, and he was already legendary then. We were talking about him even when I was first there in 1990. He popularized the phrase, invest what you know, and we all talked about that. He also popularized bottoms-up strategies for investing. He ran the Magellan Fund from 1977 to 1990, during which time it was #1 in the world. And Gephardt got in, and many other Americans got in. By 1983, Magellan was the largest fund, and through 1997, Magellan outperformed all other mutual funds. And those of you who don't know, there is very little persistence in the world of investing. It is very difficult to outperform year after year. It's shockingly rare. And Peter was able to do that. Following his departure from the Magellan Fund, Mr. Lynch devoted his time to nonprofit work and to his family, including president of the family's Lynch Foundation. For over 35 years, he's helped raise scholarships for needy inner-city students. He was awarded $7 million in partial scholarships to students every year. Mr. Lynch also authored some of the most successful books ever written about the stock market and investing, and continues to serve as an advisory board member of Fidelity Funds. To introduce our 2025 Lifetime Achievement Awards, Dan Veru, a senior partner and chief investment officer at Palisade Capital Management. Dan is also a trustee with me on the board, and we appreciate his service and his expertise in this area. Dan serves as chairman of the firm's investment committee and the ESG committee, and is a member of the operating committee. Prior to joining Palisades, Dan was AWAD Asset Management, with them, a division of Raymond James, and with Drexel Burnham Lambert. He's been on CNBC, Bloomberg News, and Fox News, a valued trustee of the museum, and a friend of mine, and a friend of Peter Lynch. Dan Veru, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm honored to be introducing Peter Lynch, the 2025 recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award of the Museum of American Finance. Peter has lived a rich life devoted to his family, faith, and profession, while changing the lives of so many people through his philanthropy and wisdom. When you search for the most recognized equity mutual fund managers of all time, the first name that appears is Peter Lynch. Warren Buffett, by the way, is number 4 on that same list. Simply stated, he defines the investment management industry, and the financial history of our country cannot be written without noting his extraordinary contributions. Through his insatiable curiosity for information, 80-hour work weeks, and a refined analytical approach, Fidelity's Magellan Fund had an annualized return of over 29% from 1977 to 1990. Dick, I hope you were in during that period of time. which was more than twice the return of the S&P 500 over the same period. And the assets of the fund grew from $18 million under his stewardship to $14 billion. Certainly would have been one of the biggest funds at that time, which certainly helped catapult Fidelity to the top of the financial services industry. His investment process was simple. He picked growth companies at a reasonable price, coining the term GARP, by applying an intense bottom-up analytical process in a broad cross-section of industries. In the process, he changed the financial lives of everyday people who invested directly or indirectly in the fund. I can tell you firsthand that his passion for stock picking continues today. There's nothing more intimidating for me than discussing a company we might own in a portfolio, because you quickly learn that Peter knows more about the company he's asking you about than you do. In 1990, Peter turned 46 and was at the peak of his success when he suddenly decided to retire from the daily management of Magellan, exactly 13 years to the day from when he started, in order to spend more time with his family. In his book, Beating the Street, he stated, quote, "When you start confusing Freddie Mac, Sally Mae, and Fannie Mae with members of your own family, and you remember 2,000 stock symbols but forget the children's birthdays, there's a good chance you've become too wrapped in your work." Advice I certainly tried to incorporate in my own family life. He shifted his priorities to philanthropy with his beloved late wife, Carolyn, while also mentoring the next generation of investment professionals at Fidelity. His contributions to education, notably his beloved Boston College, healthcare, or the arts, have made an indelible impact on his community and on the lives of so many people. I've seen for myself the impact this man has made on the lives of children through his support and devotion to the Catholic Schools Foundation, a charity that Palisade has proudly supported almost since its inception. My late partner, Marty Berman, and our founder, and I would recall fondly how we simply couldn't say no to Peter's annual fundraising requests, particularly when you would meet the kids he was helping. I remember seeing tears roll down Marty's face as he was writing a check in support of the kids. In April 2023, Peter was honored by the Catholic Schools Foundation for his 33 years of service educating the neediest children and preparing many of them for the elite colleges and universities that they would attend. Instead of reflecting on his own achievements, he chose to honor his good friend, Robert Kraft, on his work to combat anti-Semitism and how important his efforts were, while also reflecting on the obvious dangers to society of hate speech. Though we no longer manage Magellan, Peter continues to have a role at Fidelity, mentoring the next generation of investment professionals, and remained the face of the firm through the 90s. He also published 3 best-selling books on investing, believing that the average investor could pick stocks like the pros if they worked at it and followed simple principles. In one of his books, he stated, quote, "Your investor's edge is not something you get from Wall Street experts. It's something you already know. You can outperform the experts if you use your edge by investing in companies or industries you already understand." These books were way ahead of their time, as they democratized the investment process for anyone willing to do the work. Today, Peter continues to focus on philanthropy and still has the passion and intellectual curiosity for stocks that he had decades ago. But clearly, his priority remains his family, especially his 10 grandchildren, which he proudly displays on the back of his iPhone in the case that holds them. Recently, David Cowan and I brought some of the important items that you saw earlier tonight in the museum's collection to his home in Boston. And we had a great discussion on the historical significance of each item. He's a passionate historian and lover of history. However, when it was time for him to see his grandchildren, the meeting abruptly ended. As we quickly collected the irreplaceable artifacts, Esther, his miniature dachshund, ushered us to the door so she and Peter could get to his beloved grandkids on time. Ladies and gentlemen, Please welcome my dear friend, my mentor, and a living legend, the one and only Peter Lynch.
It's just so amazing to be here tonight, and Speaker Gephardt, he's a hero of mine, and Art Cashin, another hero, and another Jesuit-trained person too. That's another bonus, but great person, and to think how also impressive to Admiral 4-star Bill Owens here, because I was a lieutenant in South Korea, 2nd Division. Tonight we have 26,000 troops in South Korea, so salute to you, 4-star, heavy-duty stuff. So I'm just thinking, how do they ever do it in this country? So Dave Cowan and Dan came up and talked about something I knew nothing of. I love history, about the start of our country financially. And how do you do with every one of the colonies sells currency? They have their own dollars. They have their own bonds. I mean, how do you make that work? I mean, how do you get that all together? These people in Pennsylvania, maybe they don't get along with people in Virginia. People in New York and Massachusetts, maybe that's not a great deal, because in the first 18 years of last century, the Red Sox won 5 World Series out of 18. Then we sold Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees. The Yankees had won 0 World Series. Next 80 years, they win 26. We do not like New York and Boston. Now, but this century, we're doing a little better, so. But I can't imagine the jealousy. It's a human emotion between the people in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Massachusetts about, wait a second, their bonds are selling for 30 cents, our bonds are selling for 80. How is this all going to work? And I knew nothing about Alexander Hamilton. In fact, there's a great statue of him about 100 feet from my house in Boston. I knew he was a great person, and the play has nothing to do with finance. It's good music, but terrible play. Financially, they made money at it. It really worked great, and I think the other part is how we made it through that, and to think where we are now. And I also want to talk about the role of Congress, particularly with the famous speaker, Mr. Gephardt. We've done so many great things. And how do we do this? That we had several depressions. They call them panics. That's an interesting term, panics. We do that in the stock market. When the stock market goes down 10%, we call it a correction. Like, oh, God, I thought I'd lost a lot of money. No, that's just a correction. So this is called a panic. So we had several of those panics. And then we had the Great Depression. And I never understood that adjective, great, in front of depression. It could have been miserable, terrible, crummy. I mean, just didn't seem to apply, but we had the Great Depression. And why have we had 13 recessions since the Great Depression? And we got them relatively fast, 14 months. We've never had another depression. What's happened? What's happened in this country? And that's what finance is about, and a lot of it has been achieved by our Congress. 1913, we started the Federal Reserve. We have a bank looking over all the banks, and they sort of dropped the ball in the Depression. They raised rates, but everybody's entitled to a bad start. But really important things happened in the 30s. Imagine FDIC, 1934. Imagine if your bank goes under, and you don't have your money. That's kind of scary. So you go to the other bank, the very good bank, the bank over there that's lending money. It just doesn't work. FDIC, incredibly successful program. No one has ever lost a dime in a bank since 1934. Maybe in bank stocks, but not in the bank itself. So I love banks. Love banks. Not all the bankers, but I love banks. Yeah. So that was a great one. The SEC went into business in 1934. The Securities and Exchange Commission looks at securities, the filings you make, the information. This is a thing preventing fraud. There was so many bad things going on in the 20s. People say stock market caused the depression. 1929, the market went down. Less than 1% of Americans own stocks. The economy was out of control. It's overfed. It was
it was a bag, this is a bag of gas. All exploded, nothing to do with the stock market. So in 1934, we start the SEC, and they get Joseph P. Kennedy, a stock market guy, knew all the nasty and good parts of it, President Kennedy's father, to run the SEC. But even more important than that, next year we start Social Security. What a great deal. People used to retire older, they'd move in with the kids would have to stop spending. It just didn't work. 71 million Americans are going to get a check this week on Social Security. Spectacular program. Spectacular program. We also, the same year, started even a better one. It's called unemployment compensation. This is paid for by companies. Companies contribute to this. We get laid off. They get a check for 6, 9, 12 months. I mean, these are all great buffers. That's why we've had all these recessions, and they go away. And this is a great tribute to our Congress, great Congress to our business world. And then we started, as Dan was mentioning, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, the veterans. People can buy houses with 5% down. 5% down. We're talking buying a house in the 50s for $6,000, $7,000. 30 years later, it's worth $80,000, $90,000. And you pay off the mortgage. Whereas a person 3 blocks to the right is paying rent that's gone up for 33 years. 5% down. Incredible deals. I mean, these are brilliant programs that no one in America understands. Consuelo and Bob talked about financial literacy. It's incredible how little people know about all these wonderful things that exist that help all of us, whether you're Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, or people 12-year-old living in Newark or living in Lynn, Mass, or living in, they wish they had this in South Sudan. And then there's a lot of fear now about AI. How AI is going to ruin the world. There'll be no jobs. In fact, what's funny, I was on a call the other day, Dan, this guy's, he's CEO of a company supplying semiconductor companies. It was so embarrassing. On the call, he's calling it A1. And several times, like, that's a steak sauce. Like, my 11-year-old, one of my 11-year-old grandchildren, there's 10 right there, she knows her artificial intelligence. She's all over it. And I'm like, anyway. Don't be afraid of artificial intelligence. 1984, and Dick and Art remember those days, we split up AT&T. There's 100 million employees in America. AT&T had 1 million of them. 1 million employees work for AT&T. Since that time on, the amount of business with cell phones and data and texting and videos has gone up 50-fold. 50-fold. You sum up T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T today, 325,000 employees. 325,000 employees. They've gone from 1 million to 325. We've gone from 100 million jobs to 158 million jobs. People said it's going to be all over, when this company breaks up. People have such a fear. It's such a great country. It's so many things. Dick mentioned a lot of those elements. Why people want to come here. Spectacular place to be. And then I want to talk about banks. I want to talk about small business. There's 35 million small business in America. That's someone less than 500 employees. 35 million. They employ 61 million Americans. That's up 15 million last 15 years. That's where the real growth in the country is. Some of those people grow larger, some stay the same. 35 million little businesses. And where they get their money? From a local bank. There's a guy called Phil Knight. Somebody thought I was wearing Nike. These are New Balance, but Phil Knight went to a local small bank in Oregon, helped finance his inventories, his receivables. Nike's done pretty well. You never get credit. There was a bank involved there. Mortgages come from banks. Loans come from banks. They take deposits, turn them into loans. If you want to see a good movie, see It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. You'll know about it. And you know, that's so important that all this occurs. And the companies, the buy side, so we taught the banks that lend people get going. Once companies get larger, institutions like Fidelity and pension funds and college endowments, then when companies go public, we can then invest in them. But they have to get going. It's almost so rare. If you look at all the successful companies we know today, they all started very small, little their own money, borrowed some money. When they get large enough, they can go to firms, like venture capital firms or buyout firms, but they need to start. That's what has made our country fantastic, is the way it works. And it's so great that this country, you know, and what we're talking, this museum, it's so important. I mean, they literally had a poll one time. They asked 100 people in their 30s what the Federal Reserve was, and the vast majority thought it was a very expensive bourbon. That was the majority, yeah. So, I mean, we've got to get the word out. Finance is so important. It makes such a difference for everyone. Whether you're starting to get a job, whether you're retired, finance is important, and it's just it's not appreciated, it's not understood. And what this museum's doing, I'm so excited to learn about it and talk about it, and just think what public companies have achieved. Companies like Home Depot, TJ Maxx, you know, these companies have, Costco, what they've achieved, lowering costs to people, better products, and they've made money for shareholders. Everybody's won. And it's important now to know about stocks, know about investing, because 2 generations ago, you worked at a Xerox, IBM, US Steel, you get a pension fund. You get X amount of your salary the rest of your life. Those don't exist anymore. If you don't save, you don't know where you're putting the money, you have a problem down the road. So, it's kind of interesting that we finished with public companies, because exactly next year, it'll be 400 years since Peter Minuet, with the Dutch West Indies Company, a public company. You could have bought shares 400 years ago and sold shares. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. A lot of my stories aren't true. This is a true one. You could buy stock in that company. They bought this island for 60 guilders, or 24 bucks from the Native Americans. That was a very successful public company. So I'm so honored to be here tonight, and it's a great thing we have here. It's great what's here. Let's get it a lot bigger. Thank you.
This was definitely a grand finale. There's no question about it. So this is the certificate for and the award for Peter Lynch, Lifetime Achievement Award, honoring a legendary investor and mutual fund manager, as well as a generous philanthropist in support of community service programs and education and cultural organizations. And we will now include the Museum of American Finance among that list. So Peter Lynch, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you and to give you the Lifetime Achievement Award.